Kindness part 2. And this one's tough. Number 6. Enemies also treat like this. Jesus made sure enemies were covered, and we didn't just all take care of our friends. And he was speaking to people sometimes who were going to kill him. Well, if Jesus understood my enemies, he wouldn't have said these things like love your enemies. He understands. If any of your enemies, do you believe any of them are trying to kill you? Probably not. If so, you should actually report that. Luke 6:27, Jesus said, I say to you who hear, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you. There was a series of teachings that Jesus did where he said, you have heard. And then he said something common. And in this case, he said, love your friends, hate your enemies. You've heard that. That's normal. That's why they're called an enemy. That's why there's this new word, frenemy, right? What's frenemy? A friend who's actually an enemy, right? And you think they're a friend. But he says, that's what you've heard. That's what you feel is culturally acceptable. You can hate if they're your enemy. But he says, but I say to you, and so here comes the truth. Love your enemies, hate your friends. No. Love your enemies, do good to those who hate you. He makes sure it isn't even a weak word. If they're not real fond of you, you still could do good to them. No, if they hate you, still love. Why? Because that's our part. Our part is loving. We're following Jesus. That's why he loved those who would kill him. And he loved them after they killed him. He died for them. Those in the early church were those who possibly were involved in demanding his death, if not actually participating in it. And they became the early church that followed him. That's our example. Romans 12:20-21. To the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. But overcome evil with good. We want to overcome evil with good, instead of letting evil overcome us and make us evil. Now this practice, or this, it's a very cultural thing, this heaping burning coals on his head. You said, that's exactly what I wanted to do to my enemy. Now I heard, yeah, that works out. What's funny is not that we don't want to do that, but that it actually is done by being kind to them. But I heard it 2 ways. One I heard is if you heaping coals of fire on their head, burning coals, is like that's how you get them back, because they'll feel so guilty if you're kind to them. But as I researched further into this cultural expression of its time, what would happen is, you remember, and if you've ever watched some of these survival shows, they have to keep a fire going because they don't have a lighter, they don't have matches or something to just restart a fire. So in the olden days, back when Jesus was alive and others, they had to always keep a fire burning in their home or they wouldn't have a fire. So what they would if they would accidentally let the fire go out, someone in the house would have to take a pan and walk over to the neighbors and ask if they could have some fire. And then they'd have to keep it hot all the way home. Now, some of them, they had a way they carried things. And the reason, I don't know if you ever noticed why people carry things on their head. Do you know why? You can walk through narrower space. That was part of it. In the trails, days of walking on jungle or forest trails, they're not made wide. And so they could, you ever do that? If you put it on your head, you can take less room and it frees your hands and whatever else. So what they might do is they would carry this container on their head. So they go to the neighbor and they get the fire. Now, not only do they have to request the fire, they have to get it all the way back home. Neighbors were not close like we are in geographically. They were further apart. And they'd have to have enough coals to get it all the way home and still have it. So how do you be nice to your neighbor? You heap those coals of fire on their head. Sounds mean, but it's actually giving more than they even might need in order to be sure it meets their need. So isn't that a better way to understand that? So when we give water to the enemy when he's thirsty, we give him something, we meet his or her need even beyond, so that it satisfies what their need is, like heaping coals of fire on their heads. I really think it helps us understand that we're just really helping them survive sometimes by the kindness we give them. It may seem like doing a lot to us, but it may be survival to them that someone is kind. There are many testimonies that come of people who someone was kind to them when they didn't deserve it, and it changed their lives. So we want to be doing that. Heartlessness, thoughtlessness, abuse, and cruelty have ruined more than one relationship. Sometimes it wasn't just meanness, but not caring, being thoughtless. The greatest evangelism of our time could be done by a renewal of kindness, because people are attracted to and respond to kindness. It's a very much an evangelistic tool for believers. A way to reach people is to be kind. And if it's not just the one you're kind to, if others see that, they may say, that's different. That sets you apart from other people. I don't have that, and I want that. Kindness could be evangelical. Too many people are living a lifestyle dominated by fear. They're running through life scared. And part of that fear is they won't have what they need. They won't have any nurturing. Nobody cares what they're going through. Isn't that one of the things that bothers? You know why people sometimes pay psychologists lots of money? So someone will listen and act like they care. If I can't find them in my life, I'll pay them. I need someone who will listen to me and care. How much better if they run into a believer that God puts in front of them and they care. I'm sure that's part of the success of the Women's Health Center, is someone who listens and cares without condemnation. If people only knew how much they are loved by a kind God, and that his people love and care about what happens to them, it would be life-changing, wouldn't it? If they would only know how much the kind God loves them. And it may not show in their lives until believers step up and show them the kindness of God. Remember a previous one? Never plan to get paid back. This isn't just about money. If we're saying I'm kind, not because I want them to be kind to me, but because I want them to know that Jesus is kind and his followers are kind because he is. You know, one year at kids' youth camp, they took a theme and it was on their t-shirts. I don't know if some of your young, they're probably college age now or older. I don't know if you remember the t-shirts they were going around here with. They said, Jesus is nice. Do you remember that? Because our world has been acting like Jesus condemns people, and he doesn't. There's a whole group of Christian business people sponsoring a website called He Gets Us. Have you seen these commercials? They talk about the reality of how life is for people and how Jesus is there for them. And that's how it comes to the conclusion is Jesus gets us. He understands what we go through. Why shouldn't his people be more like that also? So the world knows Jesus is nice. He's kind. They had psychedelic 70s colors, and the actual things they decorated were like guitars. They had all these psychedelic 70s type stuff. Jesus is nice, though. He's nice now, too.
As it's also important to respond to kindness as a Christian. You know, be overly gracious. You know?
Yeah, it can't be overemphasized. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
We can't overdo this. Oh, you're just too kind. We may say it, but they don't mean it. Oh, you're too kind. No, what they mean is, you're exactly what I need, kind. That's what we need to be. And here's how we do it, not only to unbelievers, but to each other. Number 7, seek the best for each one's life. Seek the best for each one's life. Galatians 6:2, bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. Are you kidding me? Yes. The law of Christ is not rules. The law of Christ includes helping each other with our burdens. Erica.
I just wanted to say real quick, also, like sometimes if I'm feeling some kind of way or I'm being negative, or stinking thinking or something like that, I will intentionally stop myself and then open my eyes to see if there's a kind act that I can do for someone else. Like sometimes I'll go and buy some hot ramen, some cup of noodles, a little 6-pack, go pass it out to homeless people. And when I do that, if God, He's feeding me, but I'm helping to feed others. And guess what? I don't have such stinking thinking. So that kindness.
I do think the Lord uses us individually. He puts certain things on each one's heart. Often from our own experience of when we didn't receive kindness and we wish someone would have been kind. And it reminds us when we see someone else in the place we were, say, I can respond. And if you say, well, I would like to do that, but there's never opportunities in my life to show kindness, ask the Lord to show you. Let us see the world through His eyes. It's a different world. Touch my heart. One of those songs says that we sing. Touch my heart with what touches yours. That's what we want. If it touches God's heart, we want it to touch ours too. And we seek the best, not only with kindness, but by caring about our loved ones and friends and fellow believers. Do we want what's best, God's best for them? Proverbs 21:21, whoever pursues righteousness and kindness will find life, righteousness, and honor. Whoever pursues kindness. So it may be something we have to say, how can I show kindness to this specific person to seek the best for their life? It may be someone you love. I'm not just saying enemies, but it could be someone we don't know. But it could be someone we know very well. And there's a kindness God wants to use us to do in their lives. Because we're to be kind to one another too. Look what it says here in 1 Thessalonians 5:15. See that no one repays anyone evil for evil, but always seek to do good to one another. That's believer to believer, but he doesn't end there. And to everyone. So we are to be doing kindness and good to one another as believers, but also to everyone. You mean we don't have some rule of which people we don't have to reach? No. Watch out or Jesus will tell you, the Good Samaritan. When you try to say, well, who's my neighbor? And he'll say, well, let me tell you who's your neighbor. Whoever needs you to be a neighbor. That's who's your neighbor. That's what that story comes to the conclusion. You know who was the neighbor? The one who saw the man needed it and gave it. That's the neighbor. So we see a need, they're our neighbor. What are you doing being my neighbor? You don't live anywhere near me. You have a need, right? Kindness is the fruit of the Spirit among all of them, which primarily benefits others. We gain for ourselves love, joy, peace. We want peace. We want to feel love. We want joy. We need patience. That's for me. I'm patient with others. It's my issue. But kindness is for the benefit of others. God put this fruit of the Spirit among the others so it would be the benefit of the others. Because you're not supposed, none of these verses ever say, go around expecting people to be kind to you. What verse is that? This is what we give. Kindness is for others. It's a fruit of the Spirit God gives us for the benefit of others. Be kind, for just about everyone we meet is fighting a battle of some kind. Think about it. Just about everyone we meet is fighting a battle of some kind in their life. I want to restate something we said last week. I just don't remember it. It was this. We have very few opportunities to do great acts of kindness for others, but scarcely an hour passes without an opportunity or a chance to perform a minor and unnoticed one. That was from last week. We may not get opportunities to do great acts of kindness, but we get many opportunities to do small, unnoticed acts of kindness. And the last one, number 8, set your heart to be like Christ. Ephesians 5:1-2 says, therefore, be imitators of God as beloved children, and walk in love as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. We are to imitate Christ. Enough said. I mean, we just spent 2 weeks talking about following that verse, imitating Christ. He's kindness incarnate. He was kindness brought to life. How much the world has changed because of the kindness of Jesus, not just because he laid down his life. In his day, in Jesus' day and earlier than that, there were very few institutions of mercy, if not none. There were not groups that would get together and provide a mission or a health house or any of those. They didn't exist. Since that, now wherever Christianity has gone in the world, the followers of Christ have given themselves to performing many acts of kindness. The places that even if they're not just preaching, but they're just offering things to people, have come since Christ. Before that, the world wasn't even doing that. The world has changed. Not only, like Gabe said last night, we don't have any idea how much the world has changed. It would not be what it is had not Christ been resurrected. A kindness given, your last one there, a kindness given is not a kindness lost. A kindness given is not a kindness lost. It's an investment that brings eternal rewards. A kindness given is not a kindness lost. It's an investment that brings eternal rewards. Whether you see them and receive them in this life, whether you never know about it, but that person ends up in heaven. There was a song, it was quite popular for a while. It was just called Thank You. And the chorus, it talked about, I dreamed I went to heaven and you were there with me. And when you came up to people, they came up while I was walking with you in heaven, people kept coming up and saying, thank you for giving to the Lord. I am a life that was changed. We don't know. We don't know. The kindness done. Remember, I've told you about those ladies who couldn't get a cab home from Walmart, and I took them home. I never heard from them again. I don't know what happened. Those are opportunities we do because of Jesus, not so we see what happens. We leave that in his hands. Yes, Karen.
I don't know if you remember years ago going to Knott's Berry Farm, and I mean years ago when my kids were young.
It was probably free.
And there were 50, 48, so it was young, long time ago. There's an old schoolhouse that you could go in and sit in, next to where there was the miniatures. On the chalkboard in the schoolhouse was this saying. I memorized it and tried to teach it to my kids. Kindness is to do and say the kindest thing in the kindest way.
There we go. And it's going to go right into our next word. Kindness is to do and say
the kindest thing in the kindest
The
way.
kindest thing in the kindest way. Lord, help us to do that.